Forced into marriage with an older man, but his unexpected kindness changed everything. The twin sons of Zephyr. 7 burned low on the horizon, painting the dusty plains in shades of gold and orange. Lyra Vance tightened the strap of her satchel as the hover coach trundled along the winding path that led to Caldric Thorm's ranch. Her stomach churned with a mix of fear and frustration. She had heard the stories of Caldric Thorn, a man older, rich, and powerful, feared by many settlers and traders, and now, by her family's insistence, she was to marry him. Lyra stared out at the dusty plains, stretching endlessly before her. The wind carried a faint metallic scent, the smell of the robotic livestock grazing in distant fields. She had grown up in the smaller settlements closer to the planetary hub, where the buildings were sleek and the air buzzed with hover cars and communication drones. But here, on the frontier, life was raw, simple, and harsh. Every settler had to work hard, for even the smallest mistakes could mean disaster in this rugged world. Her parents' words still echoed in her mind. "It is for your security, Lyra. Caldric Thorn is wealthy and respected. He will take care of you." But how could she feel secure when she was being forced into the arms of a man she barely knew? The coach came to a stop before a massive structure of steel and transparent panels that glimmered in the dying light. The Thorn Ranch was more like a fortress than a home, perched on a small plateau that overlooked the plains. Robotic herders moved the livestock in orderly lines across the fields below, their mechanical limbs glinting as they worked. The place was intimidating, yet impressive in its precision. A tall figure appeared at the doorway, Caldric Thorn himself. His frame was strong and straight, his movements precise. He was older than Lyra had expected, with streaks of silver in his dark hair and a few fine lines around his eyes. But what struck her most was his gaze. It was steady, calm, and thoughtful. Not the harsh, commanding stare she had feared. "Lyra Vance," he said, his voice low but clear, carrying authority without aggression. "Welcome to my home." Lyra bowed her head politely, trying not to let her surprise show. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, her voice uncertain. She stepped down from the coach, feeling the coarse dust crunch beneath her boots. Caldric gestured toward the main entrance. "Come inside. You must be tired from your journey." Inside, the ranch was surprisingly warm and welcoming. The walls were lined with holographic panels showing weather patterns, livestock health, and communications with neighboring settlements. The furniture was simple but elegant, and there were small personal touches: flowers in a vase, a carved wooden table, a chair with a soft cushion. Lyra had expected cold, impersonal rooms, not this subtle warmth. "I have prepared a room for you," Caldric said, leading her down a hallway. "It faces the plains. You will see the livestock grazing at dawn." Lyra nodded, trying to hide her awe. She could feel the weight of the upcoming arrangement pressing down on her, yet Caldric's manner was nothing like the stories she had heard. He did not command her or speak with impatience. He simply guided her, quietly and respectfully. When she entered her quarters, she was relieved to find it comfortable and spacious. A soft bed, a small desk, and a window that opened to the plains below made it more like a guest's room than a bride's cage. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed, letting out a sigh. She had expected confinement and coldness, but instead, there was thoughtfulness. She didn't understand it yet, but something about Caldric Thorn felt different. Dinner was a quiet affair. Caldric served simple but nutritious food, plated neatly with attention to detail. He asked Lyra about her journey and listened intently to her answers, not interrupting or dismissing her. For the first time in days, Lyra felt a small spark of curiosity instead of fear. After dinner, he offered to show her the main control room of the ranch. "You may find it interesting," he said with a hint of a smile. Lyra agreed, and they walked together through the large hallways. Caldric explained how the robotic herders worked, how the solar collectors powered the ranch, and how he communicated with other settlers. His explanations were patient and clear, and he seemed genuinely pleased when she asked questions or showed interest. "Most people just order the machines around," he said, his voice quiet as they watched a herder lift a young calf to safety. "But understanding them, that's the only way to make life here smoother." Lyra nodded, impressed. "I never thought of it that way. I thought machines were just tools, not something to understand. Everything has a rhythm," he said, looking out at the plains. "Even people." His words lingered in her mind long after they returned to her quarters. She realized that Caldric Thorn was not the cruel, imposing figure she had imagined. There was patience in his actions, a thoughtfulness that few people showed. She didn't trust him yet, not fully, but she felt a faint relief. Maybe this forced marriage would not be as terrible as she had feared. That night, As the twin suns set and the skies turned deep violet, Lyra lay awake. She listened to the gentle hum of the ranch machinery and the distant calls of robotic livestock. She thought about Caldric, the way he moved, the way he spoke, and how he treated her with quiet respect. Her heart still guarded, allowed herself a small flicker of hope. The next morning, the suns rose over the plains in a brilliant blaze of gold and red. Lyra stepped out onto her balcony, feeling the wind whip through her hair. She watched the robotic herders at work, their precise movements mesmerizing in the morning light. Caldric appeared beside her, offering a thermos of steaming tea. "Good morning," he said, his tone gentle. "I thought you might like some tea before the day begins." "Thank you," Lyra said, accepting the cup. The warmth spread through her hands and into her chest. She was beginning to understand that this man, whom many feared, could be kind in ways that surprised her. They spent the day walking the ranch. Caldric showed her the solar arrays, the storage units, and even let her take the controls of a herder under his guidance. He corrected her mistakes gently, never scolding, always encouraging. Lyra realized that life on this frontier world would be difficult, yes, but it did not have to be lonely or cruel. By evening, Lyra felt exhausted but exhilarated. She had worked harder than she ever had in her life, yet she felt a small sense of pride in her accomplishments. Caldric watched her, not with judgment, but with what she could only describe as approval. As night fell, the plains glimmered under the twin moons. Lyra sat quietly, reflecting on her first days at the Thorn Ranch. She had arrived expecting fear, coldness, and domination, yet what she found was patience, understanding, and an unexpected kindness that puzzled her. She realized that this was only the beginning. Life with Caldric Thorn would not be easy. There would be challenges, adjustments, and moments of doubt. But for the first time since her journey began, Lyra felt a spark of possibility. Perhaps in time she could learn to respect him, maybe even trust him. The stars above shimmered, distant and endless, and Lyra felt a small thrill. The frontier was vast and unknown, and so was the man she was to marry. Yet for the first time she wondered if they could navigate it together, and somewhere deep within, she felt the faintest hope that this forced marriage might change more than just her life. It might change her heart. The morning air on Zephyr 7 was sharp and clear, carrying the faint smell of metal and dust. Lyra Vance stepped out onto the balcony of her quarters, squinting as the twin suns began their climb. The plains below were alive with robotic livestock moving in perfect lines, guided by the quiet hum of their mechanical herders. Lyra's mind was busy replaying yesterday's experiences. The ranch was not just a home. It was a place of work, responsibility, and learning. And Caldric Thorn, the man she had feared, was slowly revealing himself to be patient, careful, and unexpectedly kind. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the main yard, determined to learn more about the life she was now a part of. Caldric was already there, inspecting the herders, his posture calm, precise, and authoritative without being harsh. He looked up and gave her a small nod. "Good morning," he said. "Ready to see how the herders managed the northern fields?" "Yes," Lyra replied, trying to hide her nervous excitement. She had learned the basics yesterday, but today she hoped to gain more confidence. They walked together across the dusty plains, the mechanical herders moving around them. Caldric explained how each robot was programmed to react to changes in terrain, weather, and the behavior of the livestock. Lyra watched carefully, her curiosity growing with every word. "Why do you care so much about the herders?" she asked. "They are just machines, aren't they?" Caldric glanced at her with a faint smile. "Machines may not have feelings, but they have purpose. Understanding purpose helps in understanding people, too." Lyra frowned thoughtfully. "I don't understand," Caldric chuckled softly. "You will, in time. Life on the frontier is about observing and learning. Nothing can be rushed, not even understanding another person." They continued through the northern fields, checking the robots and adjusting their routes. Lyra noticed Caldric's quiet attention to detail, not just in machines, but in everything around him. He paused to repair a small solar panel with gentle hands, and when one of the robotic herders malfunctioned, he patiently guided Lyra through the steps to fix it. "You are learning quickly," he said after she managed to realign the herder's sensors. "Most settlers take days to understand this." Lyra felt a warm rush of pride. "Thank you, sir. I didn't think I could do this." Caldric's eyes softened. "I knew you could. You just needed guidance." As the suns climbed higher, the temperature rose. Lyra wiped sweat from her brow and glanced nervously at the sky. Clouds were forming in unusual patterns, dark streaks curling across the horizon. Caldric noticed her glance and frowned slightly. "Those clouds are not ordinary," he said. "We may be facing a solar storm. It can disrupt communications and even affect the herder's sensors." Lyra's heart raced. She had read about storms on frontier planets, how quickly they could disrupt life. "What do we do?" she asked. "Stay calm. I'll show you," he replied. Caldric guided her to the control room, where panels lit up with data about the approaching storm. He explained how to shield the solar arrays, adjust the herders, and protect the storage units. Lyra watched him work with careful precision. The way he managed the ranch during a potential crisis was unlike anything she had imagined. There was no anger, no panic, only focus and calm, and somehow in that moment, Lyra felt a strange admiration for him growing inside her. "Can I help?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. Caldric studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Yes. Hold this panel steady while I recalibrate the sensor arrays." For hours they worked side by side, speaking little but understanding much. Lyra's hands moved carefully under his guidance, and Caldric's corrections were gentle, never condescending. Even when she made mistakes, he corrected her with patience rather than frustration. By the time the storm passed, the herders were safe, the herders secured, and the ranch fully operational. Lyra stepped outside into the warm light of the afternoon, breathing in the crisp air and feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never known. Caldric stood beside her, his expression calm. "You did well today," he said simply.
Lyra felt a smile tug at her lips.
"We did well," she replied. For the first time, she felt that she was not just a guest or a forced bride. She was part of this world, part of this life, and perhaps part of his life too. The storm left the plains refreshed, the air sparkling with the dust of the desert and the scent of distant metal. Lyra and Caldric walked together toward the western ridge, where the twin suns were beginning to set. The light was soft, warm, and golden, illuminating the vast expanse of plains, robotic herders, and distant mountains. "You seem more confident today," Caldric remarked. "I feel more confident," Lyra admitted. "Thanks to you." "You had it in you all along," he replied. "I only showed you the path." There was a pause, comfortable and quiet, as they watched the plains together. Lyra felt a strange closeness to Caldric, the kind that grew not from obligation, but from shared effort and understanding. She realized that this man, who seemed so stern and older, had a way of teaching without diminishing her, guiding without controlling. As the suns dipped below the horizon, Lyra noticed a faint smile on his lips. He rarely smiled, and it was subtle, almost shy, but it was there. Her heart fluttered unexpectedly. That evening they returned to the main hall of the ranch. Lyra was exhausted, but her mind buzzed with thoughts. Caldric had asked her questions about her life, her dreams, and even her childhood memories. He listened, truly listened, without interrupting or judging. The more she spoke, the more she realized that he was not just wealthy or powerful. He was thoughtful, kind, and patient in ways she had never expected. Dinner was quiet, but the atmosphere was lighter than the night before. Lyra laughed softly at a story Caldric told about a mischievous herder robot that had tripped over its own legs. She had never seen him laugh so openly, and it felt strange but comforting. Afterward, Caldric offered to show her the observatory. The observatory was a circular room at the top of the ranch filled with telescopes, charts, and instruments for observing Zephyr, Seven's twin suns, and distant planets. Lyra had never seen anything like it. "This is where I study the skies," Caldric said. "It helps me predict weather, solar flares, and even the movements of traders or settlers on other planets." Lyra peered through one of the telescopes, gasping as she saw the expanse of space stretching endlessly above. Stars twinkled like diamonds, planets glowed faintly, and distant nebulae painted the sky in brilliant colors. She felt small but alive, and strangely at peace. "You enjoy it?" Caldric asked, standing quietly beside her. I do," Lyra admitted. "It's beautiful." He nodded, his expression unreadable yet gentle. "The frontier is harsh, but it has its own kind of beauty. You just have to know where to look." Lyra looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the older man who had been forced upon her, but someone patient, strong, and unexpectedly kind. She realized that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time she felt that maybe, just maybe, she could navigate them with him, not against him. That night, as Lyra lay in her quarters, she thought about the day's events, the storm, the work, the laughter, and the quiet conversations. She felt a subtle shift within her. The fear and resentment she had carried since her family forced the marriage were still there, but they were mingled now with curiosity, admiration, and a flicker of trust. She closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the ranch machinery and the distant calls of robotic livestock. The frontier was still vast, the plains still endless, and the life ahead still uncertain. But for the first time, Lyra felt that she could face it, not alone, but with Caldric Thorne by her side. The suns had set, leaving the plains bathed in twilight, and the stars shimmered faintly in the deepening sky. Lyra realized that the frontier was full of unknowns, just like the man she was meant to marry, and yet, for the first time, she felt a strange, warm anticipation for the days ahead, a feeling she could not name, but a feeling that promised change, growth, and perhaps even something more. The dawn on Zephyr. 7 came slow and soft as if the twin suns themselves hesitated before spilling light over the dusty plains. Lyra Vance awoke to the quiet hum of the ranch machinery, feeling the warmth of her blankets and the faint scent of flowers Caldric had placed on her bedside table. She stretched, feeling a strange mix of comfort and anticipation. Today, she thought, she might learn more about the man she was slowly beginning to understand. Down in the main hall, Caldric Thorne was already awake, reviewing schedules for the day. He did not startle when Lyra entered. Instead, he offered a calm nod and a slight smile. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "I did," Lyra replied, surprised at how natural the question felt coming from him. "And you?" "As well as one can on the frontier," he said quietly. "There is always work to do, but the morning is still calm." After breakfast, Caldric suggested a walk to the ridge overlooking the plains. Lyra followed, noticing how he moved, deliberate, careful, yet unhurried. There was no rush, no tension in his steps. As they walked, the plains stretched endlessly before them, glimmering under the light of the rising suns. The robotic herders moved in neat lines below, their mechanical limbs working in perfect coordination. "Do you ever get tired of all this?" Lyra asked, gesturing toward the vast expanse of fields, machines, and structures. Caldric considered her question for a moment before replying. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but responsibility keeps me focused. Life here is demanding, yes, but it has rewards. The land, the herders, the settlers, everything matters if you pay attention." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "It's different from what I expected. I thought life on a ranch would be lonely and harsh." Caldric chuckled softly. "Many think that, but loneliness is a choice, and harshness is only what you make of it. You adapt, or you fail." They reached the ridge and stopped to admire the view. The plains below shimmered like a golden sea, the robotic herders moving in silent harmony. Lyra felt a sense of awe, and for the first time she saw the ranch through Caldric's eyes, not just as a place of work, but as a living, breathing ecosystem. "You seem different since your arrival," Caldric observed. "More attentive, more confident." "I am learning," Lyra admitted. "Not just about the ranch, but about you." Caldric's brow furrowed slightly, and he looked away toward the horizon. "I am not an easy man to understand," he said. "Most people see the wealth, the land, and the machines. They do not see the years behind them, or the choices I've made." Lyra hesitated. "Choices?" "Yes," he said softly. "Life has a way of shaping people, sometimes in ways that others do not notice. I have been alone, in many ways. It is not easy to let someone close, even when circumstances force it." Lyra's heart softened. For the first time, she realized that Caldric's sternness was not arrogance or pride. It was caution, built over years of loss and isolation. She had feared him because of his reputation, but now she could see the man behind it, thoughtful, careful, and quietly protective. "Do you regret anything?" Lyra asked carefully. Caldric looked at her, eyes reflecting a quiet vulnerability she had not expected. "Regret is part of life," he said, "but I try not to dwell on it. Each day is another chance to do better." Lyra felt a connection forming, a fragile bond built on shared honesty and the slow uncovering of truths. She realized that the man she had been forced to marry was more complex, more human than she had imagined. The day passed with shared work. Caldric guided her as she learned to manage a herder fleet on her own, monitoring energy levels, directing movement, and correcting minor errors. The robotic animals responded to her commands, and she felt a thrill of achievement. Caldric watched her, offering guidance without judgment. "You are improving," he said as they walked through the plains. "Soon you will handle most tasks alone. Lyra smiled, pride swelling in her chest. I think I could. And I would like to. As the suns climbed high, dark clouds began to gather again on the horizon. Lyra felt a pang of nervousness, remembering the previous storm. But Caldrick's calm demeanor steadied her. It may be minor, he said, but we must prepare. Come, I will show you the shielding process. They worked together, securing the solar arrays and recalibrating the herders. This time Lyra felt confident, following Caldrick's instructions with focus. When a herder faltered, she corrected it herself, proud to see the machine respond instantly. Caldrick gave her a small nod of approval, and for a moment their eyes met. There was no awkwardness, only mutual respect and the faintest hint of warmth. After the storm passed, Lyra and Caldrick walked to the observatory, a quiet place where they could watch the plains stretch endlessly. Lyra looked through the telescopes, observing distant planets and sparkling constellations. Caldrick stood beside her, silent but close. You seem different today, he remarked. Less afraid, more at ease. I am, Lyra admitted. You make it easier. I don't know how, but... Caldrick's expression softened, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. Perhaps trust is not something given, but something built, he said. Step by step, action by action. Lyra thought about the past days, the small kindnesses, the patient guidance, the shared work, and the quiet moments of understanding. She realized that she was starting to see Caldrick not just as the man she was forced to marry, but as someone she could admire, maybe even rely on. They spent the evening preparing for a small festival in the colony. Settlers from nearby ranches were visiting, and Caldrick expected Lyra to participate. She felt nervous, unsure of how to act in public with him, but Caldrick's calm presence reassured her. At the festival, she watched Caldrick interact with the settlers and traders. He was respected, yes, but not feared. He listened, he laughed, and he offered help when needed. Lyra saw how the colony responded to him, not because of wealth or power, but because of fairness, thoughtfulness, and genuine care. Her admiration for him grew with every interaction. Later, they walked back to the ranch under the light of the twin moons. Lyra felt a quiet excitement in her chest, a feeling she could not yet name. You are different than I imagined, she said softly. I hope that is not a disappointment, Caldrick replied quietly, his eyes meeting hers. Not at all, Lyra said. It's better. You are kind, patient, and strong. All at once. I didn't expect that. Caldrick's gaze softened. And I did not expect you to see it. Most do not. That is rare. There was a long silence as they walked, the plains stretching endlessly around them. Lyra realized that fear and resentment she had felt at the start of her journey were slowly melting. She did not yet feel love, not fully, but she felt trust, admiration, and a strange curiosity about what lay ahead. By the time they reached the ranch, Lyra felt a warmth in her heart she had not known before. She realized that the forced marriage, which had seemed like a trap, was slowly transforming into something else, an opportunity to understand another person, to grow, and maybe even to find happiness in an unexpected place. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the soft hum of the ranch machinery, she reflected on the day's events, the storms, the work, the quiet conversations, and the festival. She realized that Caldrick Thorne was not the man she had feared. He was a man shaped by experience, careful and kind, someone who could guide without controlling, who could teach without belittling. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the vast plains outside and the quiet strength of the man she was meant to marry. She did not know what the future would hold, but for the first time, she felt a faint thrill of hope. The frontier was vast and unknown, but she no longer felt completely alone. And, somewhere deep within, Lyra realized that this journey, the forced marriage, the new life, and the unexpected kindness of Caldrick Thorne, was slowly changing her. She did not yet understand how, but she was beginning to see that perhaps, in time, she could not only respect him, but... The twin moons cast soft light over the plains, and Lyra whispered to herself, a small, hopeful smile on her lips. Maybe this could be more than I feared. The sons of Zephyr. 7 rose slowly over the dusty plains, painting the ranch in golden light. Lyra Vance stood at the balcony of her quarters, taking in the sight of the robotic herders moving gracefully across the fields below. Today felt different. The air was calm, the light warm, and a quiet sense of anticipation filled her heart. Caldrick Thorne joined her, his usual calm expression softened by a faint smile. "Good morning," he said, offering her a cup of steaming tea. "I thought you might like this before we begin the day." Thank you, Lyra said, accepting it gratefully. She sipped slowly, enjoying the warmth. The ranch feels peaceful today. Caldric nodded. Yes. It is rare to have a calm day here, but sometimes even the frontier rewards patience. After breakfast, Caldric suggested they check the herders in the eastern plains. Lyra eagerly agreed. She had grown more confident in her abilities over the past days, learning not just the machines but the rhythms of the land. And more importantly, she had begun to understand Caldric. No as a man to fear, but as someone steady, thoughtful, and kind. They rode out together on small hovercrafts gliding across the plains. The herders moved smoothly below, responding to the commands Caldric had set the day before. Lyra guided a few herself, directing them with care and precision. She felt a thrill of pride as she saw the machines respond exactly as intended. You have improved greatly, Caldric said, watching her handle a herder's sensors. I am impressed. Thanks to your guidance, Lyra replied, smiling. I never thought I could learn so quickly. Caldric glanced at her, his expression softening. You have courage and patience. Those traits are often stronger than skill alone. The day continued with a sense of quiet accomplishment. They repaired a few panels damaged by dust, monitored energy levels, and recalibrated some of the herders. Lyra felt a connection growing, not just to the land, the ranch, and the machines, but to Caldric himself. Each small task shared, each gentle word of guidance, seemed to deepen her admiration and respect. As the suns climbed higher, Lyra noticed clouds forming on the horizon. But this time, instead of panic, she felt preparedness. Do you think a storm is coming? She asked. Perhaps, Caldric replied, but today we are ready. We will face it together. Sure enough, as the afternoon wore on, the winds began to rise, and the sky darkened. The twin suns were hidden behind thick clouds, and a faint electrical hum filled the air. Lyra's pulse quickened, but Caldric's calm presence grounded her. Together, they guided the herders, secured solar arrays, and adjusted energy reserves. Lyra realized how far she had come. Where once she would have panicked, now she acted with confidence, following instructions and even anticipating what needed to be done. Caldric watched her with pride, his eyes reflecting a quiet warmth. When the storm passed, the plains shimmered with a golden glow as dust settled and the herders resumed their movements. Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. We did it, she said, her voice a mix of relief and triumph. Yes, Caldric agreed. Together. As the suns began to set, painting the plains in orange and pink, Caldric suggested a walk to the western ridge. Lyra followed, enjoying the peaceful silence. The day's work had brought them closer, not through words, but through shared effort, trust, and understanding. You've changed since your arrival, Caldric said softly, his gaze on the horizon. You are stronger than you realize, and more capable than you give yourself credit for. I've learned from you, Lyra admitted. You've shown me patience, kindness, and how to see things differently. I never expected that. Caldric turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the last light of the setting suns. And I have learned from you as well. You remind me that life is not just about work, responsibility, or reputation. It's also about connection, trust, and hope. For a moment they stood in quiet companionship, the plains stretching endlessly before them. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had not yet named, but which promised something important. She realized that the forced marriage, which had begun with fear and resentment, had slowly transformed into understanding, respect, and perhaps the beginnings of affection. Later at dinner they shared stories of their lives before the ranch. Lyra spoke of her childhood in the settlements, her dreams of exploration, and her fears of being trapped in a life she did not choose. Caldric listened, offering small insights and reflections, sharing memories of the past without boasting or complaining. You've carried so much responsibility, Lyra said gently. I understand a little more why you are the way you are. Caldric smiled faintly. Life teaches lessons, some easy, some hard. I hope now, with you here, some lessons can be lighter, more joyful. Lyra felt a flutter of hope. I would like that. After dinner, Caldric suggested they visit the observatory. The twin moons glowed softly over the plains, casting silver light on the dust and machinery. Lyra peered through the telescope, marveling at distant planets and shimmering stars. Caldric stood beside her, his presence calm and reassuring. The frontier is vast, he said quietly, Full of unknowns, challenges, and beauty, life here is not simple, but it is meaningful. Lyra looked at him, truly looked at him, and felt a deep understanding. He was not a man to fear, nor simply a partner out of obligation. He was someone who had faced loneliness, hardship, and responsibility, and yet retained kindness, patience, and the capacity to care. I see that now, Lyra said softly. You are not what I feared. You are more. Caldrick's eyes softened, and for the first time he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. And you are more than I expected as well. Courage, curiosity, and patience. You surprise me every day. The evening passed in quiet companionship. Lyra realized that she no longer approached Caldrick with fear or resentment. Instead, she felt warmth, trust, and even admiration. The frontier, once a place of uncertainty, now felt like a shared adventure. As the night deepened, they returned to the ranch. Lyra paused at the balcony, gazing at the plains under the twin moons. Caldrick joined her, standing close, comfortable in silence. You've taught me something important, Lyra said finally. Even when life is hard, even when circumstances are forced, there can still be kindness, understanding, and even happiness. Caldrick nodded. And you've reminded me that even in a life of work, responsibility, and solitude, there can be joy, trust, and connection. Perhaps we have both learned something new. For a long moment they stood together, the wind whispering through the plains, the hum of machinery a gentle backdrop. Lyra realized that the frontier, vast and unknown, was no longer something to fear. It was a place of possibility, adventure, and growth, and she was no longer alone. The next morning, Lyra awoke with a sense of purpose. She dressed quickly and joined Caldrick in the main hall. Together they walked to the central plains, where the robotic herders moved with perfect harmony. Lyra took the controls of a herder fleet, guiding them with confidence. Caldrick watched proudly, offering subtle corrections when needed, but mostly observing as she handled tasks with skill and assurance. You've truly found your place here, he said quietly. And I've found someone I can trust, Lyra replied, smiling. Someone who teaches, guides, and cares. Thank you for showing me that. Caldrick's gaze softened, and I thank you for showing me hope, patience, and the joy of shared effort. I did not expect it, but I am grateful. As the suns rose higher, the plains shimmered, the herders moved smoothly, and the ranch thrived. Lyra and Caldrick walked side by side, no longer bound by fear or obligation, but by respect, understanding, and a growing connection that promised more in the days to come. For the first time since her journey began, Lyra felt a profound sense of peace. The forced marriage had transformed into a partnership built on trust, patience, and kindness. The frontier was still vast, still challenging, but it no longer seemed lonely or intimidating. Together, Lyra Vance and Caldrick Thorne faced the endless plains, the robotic herders, and the twin suns with a sense of hope. Their lives had changed in ways neither had expected, shaped not by fear or resentment, but by the quiet power of understanding, respect, and unexpected kindness. And as the twin suns shone brightly over Zephyr, Lyra realized that this was more than a new life. It was a new beginning.